Fresh from a winning season and a bowl game appearance in 2025, the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys are ready to take the field again for the 2026 football season. And here to talk about it is Roy Thompson, the head football coach at Arkansas Tech. Coach Thompson is beginning his second year with the Wonder Boys. And Coach, I want to start right there. I think any of us who have started a new job, once we kind of finish one cycle of that job, we can kind of look back and say, man, I learned a lot that's really going to help me moving forward. What are some of the things about being a head coach that you learned last season that you feel like will benefit you and your program this season?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in year one, man, it was when you get here in December and you're just trying to figure out how do I get a kid accepted into school, right? All of the little things of understanding, like not from a football standpoint, but even just how this university operates compared to others that you've been at. So, getting kids in school this year was a lot easier than in year one. And then even from a football standpoint, I can tell you it was a lot easier to make the first day's practice schedule or camp schedule this year because you had that template and you knew what worked and you can go back and look at it. And so I think all of those things helps you to run more efficiently, right? I didn't have to spend quite as much time because I already had that blueprint of what we're doing in those areas. And then number two, the last thing I would say is, of course, I'm back and both coordinators, offensive coordinator, Coach Espy, and offensive coordinator, Coach Weavers, and defensive coordinator, Coach Espy, both of those guys are back. And so having those dudes in place and understanding how they see the game of football, how they actually call it and want to do things on game day helps to prepare the whole team. So all of those things, I think, go together to make you a little bit more comfortable in year two versus year one.
There was a Great American Conference Media Day event a few weeks ago, and one of the things you emphasized during your remarks there was just the benefits of having about twice as many guys in the program who really understand the culture now as opposed to 365 days ago. What are some of the really small but maybe really significant ways that having more guys who get the culture will benefit you throughout this season?
Absolutely. When I remember coming in last year and we go through our period we call War Zone, right? And the only two people out there on that field that day that understood what was supposed to happen was myself and Coach Espy, right? And so you had 70 guys who had never been through it before. Well, you fast forward to this year, and the whole staff pretty much understands what War Zone means. They understand what a finish looks like. They understand what the standard is, and not only the coaching staff, but the players, And so we had a whole group of players who understood, 70 who understood. I remember after that first War Zone workout, in year one, it was like, man, wow. And looking at it in year two, there was so many guys out there who knew and could prepare for what was going on and try to help the newcomers at that point to understand what's going on. So it makes a huge difference. It does. You're not starting in ground zero. In year one, we were trying to build everything from the start. How do we work in the weight room? How do we conduct ourselves on and off the football field, right? Program standards. Well, now there's so many guys in our program who understand what go to work means and those standards and principles that we live by. It makes a huge difference.
In what ways, speaking of those returning players, did you want to see those guys improve individually and collectively during the offseason? And what kind of progress do you feel like you made with that group of returning players?
Absolutely. I think, the first thing you always want to look at, especially when you head into the offseason, is, you want to get bigger, faster, and stronger. You want to get more athletic. And so really just attacking the weight room was one of those big areas that we really wanted to focus on. And at the end of our winter workouts, we had over 30 guys who just blew the roof off. We call it gold testing, right? Kind of being a gold standard. And there were 30 guys, a lot of guys that were in the program who saw amazing numbers jump in bench, squat, power clean, and all those base lifts that we do. And so I felt like our winter workout cycle, like football is a physical game. It's a game of strength and speed. And so seeing those guys develop in those areas was huge. And we're excited about the progress we made in the weight room this offseason.
The continuous improvement of those returning players is very much the foundation of the 2026 Wonder Boys as we look ahead to this new season. But I'm sure as you went and looked at the roster and evaluated what you had at the end of fall, and then again through spring practice, there were probably some key areas where you really wanted to identify and bring in some new faces. Mm-hmm. How do you feel like you did being able to identify the talent that you needed at the spots where you needed it, maybe for some immediate help?
Absolutely. In this world of the transfer portal, you've got to constantly evaluate your roster and what you have and what you don't have. And so Looking at last season, we felt like defensive back was a spot that we probably didn't have enough depth. We had a lot of talented football players, Colin Crichton and Tyreek Jones and Trey Howard, but behind those guys, there probably wasn't a lot that was ready to play at a high level. And so that's an area that we definitely felt like we had to go out and try to get some guys in there to some experience as well as some great young talent to develop. And we felt like we did a great job with that. Our linebacker room, we lost some key guys there, whether it was through graduation and through the transfer portal. But I think we did an amazing job filling that linebacker room. It's going to be probably one of the most contested positions in camp. There's a lot of talent in that room, and we're excited about it. I've messed with Coach Proctor, our linebackers coach, all the time. Like, I'm a linebackers coach, and so I'm like, man, I don't know how you're going to get all those dudes on the field because there is a lot of talent in that room, and we're excited to see those guys work. And then the last spot I would say is right at running back. When you lose a guy like Bryson Rowland, who's a super talented kid, right? You've got to go out, and the standard is the standard, and you've got to find guys who can play at a high level. And so those were three areas that we felt like we probably really had to attack in recruiting. The good thing is I think our staff did an amazing job going out finding those guys. And D-line is a position that if you want to win at a high level, you've got to always have some guys who can pressure the quarterback and stop the run and do that at an elite level. So I think we've done a really good job of going out and finding the talent to give us a chance to be able to compete at a high level.
One of the other things that struck me from your comments during Great American Conference Media Day was just the confidence to go out there and talk about your goals and some big goals, not just for this season, but throughout your tenure here at Arkansas Tech. How do you go about convincing the guys that are in the program right now that they can go out and pursue those goals, things like conference championships and beyond, while also making sure they understand what it's going to take to get there?
Absolutely. I'm big on, you have what you say, right? Say you have not because you ask not, right? And so we have to talk about the things that we want to achieve. I'm big on goal setting too, right? I do it in my personal life, and I try to do it with my positions and my teams and my kids and everybody. You have to set a goal. You have to have a plan of what you're trying to achieve. I think a lot of times we go out there and we're just trying to play football, and you don't have the goal of what you're actually trying to achieve in mind. And so we want to set the goal, right? We want to be conference champions here at Arkansas Tech. Now, here's the other part of your question. And I try to tell the kids this all the time. You don't just show up and win football games, right? Nick Saban a lot of times talks about the process, and you're hearing the process more and more. And even in our athletic department, we're doing some leadership studies and things like that. And they talk about roots versus fruits, right? You can get caught up on the fact that you want to win a championship and miss out on all the little things you have to do to win the championship, right? And so that's our job as coaches, is to focus on those things, and we call it details, effort, and finish, right? What are you doing every single day to reach the ultimate goal, right? You don't skip over step one, right? Working hard, right? And that's what we call it, right? People talk about the process. People talk about roots versus fruits. We say go to work, right? You have to go to work every day to accomplish the end goal. And so that's it. But I think I'll say this. When I first got here, and I know like we were probably so far to even be able to talk about winning a championship, right? So you have to believe that you can actually do it. And the first part of it is saying it. And like teams break it down on, champions on 3 and all of that all the time. But I don't know if they really believe it, right? They're just saying it, right? But when you've been there and you've had that experience, you know what it takes to win championships. And I know, right? I know the amount of work that it takes. And you're right. It's not just saying it. It's what you do every day. And that's not just the football thing. I think a lot of times the kids, right, probably think it's just football. It's not just football. It's the weight room. It's the classroom. It's community service. Champions are champions everywhere, right? And until we reach the point that we can be champions on and off the field and do things at an elite level, right, go to work. Go to work. And go to work is whatever the job is. You got to do it at an elite level. And that's the message I try to get my team to understand is everyone in the GAC will be practicing in about a week. All of us, right? But what are you going to do differently in that practice to help you reach the ultimate goal, right? And so that's what we try to get them to understand. That's what we try to get them to understand.
When you talk about reflecting on that first off-season workout when you and Coach Espy were really the only two people in the room who knew what it was supposed to look like to where you are now and eventually where you want to go, what you're really talking about there is developing a player-led culture. Mm-hmm. What does a player-led team look like, and how does that ultimately lead to success on the field?
Absolutely. I think a player-led team is when the players – right, set the standard for what's accepted and not accepted within the program in all areas, right? And so that's what a player-led team looks like. The coaches, and they reinforce the culture and the philosophy and the policies of the coaching staff, right? So a lot of times it's what will the kids stand for, right? Coaches, we get paid to do this. We're going to set a high standard. But it's really what will the kids stand for, right? What is their standard of excellence? What will they allow? And so it makes a huge difference, when those guys are out there, if they're running in the summer and, one of your leaders say, no, like you didn't finish, go back because this is what a finish looks like. Or, hey, you can't show up to this workout 1 minute before. Or, hey, we're going to all wear the colors that the coach gave us. All of those little things really make a huge difference, and we've got a lot of guys, and I've seen it, man, that they're holding to the standard of being a player-led team, and we do a lot with the guys. We call it man school in the off season, where we've got a team council of guys that we feel like are emerging leaders, and we sit down and we try to talk about leadership, and we try to talk about how to empower them to be leaders, right? Because you don't know. I think some leaders are born. They're wired that way through how they live their life and their family and all of those. But other guys are not comfortable and they have to be developed. So we try to empower them, even starting small within your position room, right? Whether that's coaching another guy and doing little things like that, and all of those things make a huge difference. And then there's team leaders. There's those guys that they want the responsibility of being in front of the team and setting a high standard and modeling the principles and the culture. The coach, right, they start the culture, right? But the players are going to drive the culture. They're going to be the ones that make that culture come to life. And so that's what our guys are doing a great job of it, but it's important for sure.
Well, the 2026 season is right around the corner now in the Great American Conference and at Arkansas Tech. What are some of the most important tasks the Wonder Boys must achieve during preseason camp and once you get into game week leading up to that first game? What are some of the most important tasks this group needs to achieve to be ready to compete on September 3rd?
I've been thinking about that question probably for weeks as it gets closer to leading up into the season. And really, I know it sounds cliche, but we've got to go to work, right? I think we've got a pretty good, talented football team, but we have to build those guys to do the little things at an elite level. That's what you have to do. As football is running and tackling and discipline and accountability. And so when you have kids who you feel like are talented enough, how do we do all of those other little areas better than anyone else? And so I think that's what it is. We've got to come together as a football team. You've got to love each other. You got to want to work together, and then we've got to push each other. And so the coaches and the players, we talk about go to work and the standard and the process. Is really doing the hard work every day over the next couple of weeks. It's kind of like I'm not a handy guy, but it's kind of like building a house on a solid foundation, right? You can build that house on sand, or you can build that house on solid ground. And here in a couple of days, we'll be out there on the field, and we've got to start with solid ground, right, and build it day by day. You can't skip steps, or the house falls down. And so I'm excited about the process. I'm excited to get those guys out there and start that process of really doing what it takes to build a football team. I think we've got about 23 to 25 practices before we get a chance to go out there and play someone else. But that'll be a direct reflection of the way we worked in this time of building that house and working hard and doing the little things right.
The 111th season of Arkansas Tech football will begin on Thursday, September 3rd at 7 p.m. when the Arkansas Tech Wonder Boys host Southwestern Oklahoma State. You can get your tickets at arkansastechsports.com/tickets. Follow arkansastechsports.com throughout the next few weeks for information about tailgating and everything else that goes along with game day at Arkansas Tech University. And a reminder, you can catch all of the action during the 111th season of Arkansas Tech football during the 2026 campaign on River Country KCJC 102.3 FM, the River Country KCJC website, and arkansastechsports.com. Coach Thompson, thank you very much for making this time with us, and we look forward to that season opener on September 3rd.
Excited.
That is Roy Thompson, the head football coach at Arkansas Tech University. Until next time, so long, everybody.